What's up guys, it's Shane, also known as Wonder Subset, and in today's video, we will be transitioning from one creepy mansion to another, because ladies and gentlemen, we will be looking at Luigi's Mansion, one of my favorite games of all time, and a launch title for the Nintendo Gamecube.
The Nintendo Gamecube. What an underrated and underappreciated console this bad boy was. The Gamecube was Nintendo's 5th video game console and was part of the 6th generation along with Sony's PlayStation 2 and Microsoft's Xbox. Being the successor to the Nintendo 64, the Gamecube launched in North America on November 18, 2001, the same year the original Xbox launched. When the Gamecube launched, the launch titles included Crazy Taxi, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3, Wave Race Blue Storm, Super Monkey Ball, Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2 Rogue Leader, and Luigi's Mansion, which is the game we will be looking at today. Now as a kid, I loved the Mario Brothers, and before I had my original Xbox, I had the Super Nintendo, which came with Killer Instinct, a couple of sports games, Pilot Wings, Lion King, Aladdin, A Link to the Past, and of course Super Mario World and Super Mario All-Stars, in addition to many others. All-Stars and World were games I spent so much time on as a kid. They're just a few of the many games that first introduced me to my passion for video games and built me into the nerd that I am today. Over the years since then, of course, I got to play many more of the Plumber's games, and that included Luigi's Mansion. I remember seeing trailers for this game in addition to the GameCube back when it came out and was astounded at what I saw. Luigi with his own video game? That's so cool. Although I didn't personally own a GameCube at the time during my childhood, one of my neighborhood friends back in Georgia at the time did, and Luigi's Mansion was one of the many games we played together. When we played this game, we were honestly surprised at how different it was. The game had pretty much no platforming elements like the previous games. There were no Goombas, no Koopa Troopers, you couldn't jump on enemies but instead use a device to suck in and trap ghosts. Despite how different it was compared to the past Mario games we've played, we still thought it was cool, especially since Ghostbusters was one of our favorite films to watch back then. This was also the second game in the Mario franchise where Luigi is the main character, with the first game being Mario is Missing for the NES. Over the years since its release 20 years ago, Luigi's Mansion developed a huge following for older and younger gamers alike, spawning 2 sequels with Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon for the Nintendo 3DS and Luigi's Mansion 3 for the Nintendo Switch, in addition to a 3DS remake of the first game. The game is also the 5th best-selling GameCube game with around 3.33 million copies sold.
Wow, 3.33 million copies. Everywhere you go nowadays, as soon as you mention Luigi's Mansion, people will start going all Charlie Day about it. Now, I thought it was about time that I added a Nintendo game to my Let's Look At series on this channel, and I thought Luigi's Mansion was the perfect choice. Because not only is it one of my personal favorite games of all time, but because it's so well known and has developed such a huge following over the years, and I thought, since it's such a classic, it deserved a title and some recognition on this video. So, let's pick up ye old GameCube controller and enter the spooky mansion to see how far this game has aged in the span of 20 years.
So the story of the game starts off in a dark, forested area. At some point before the events of the game, Luigi supposedly won a mansion in some unspecified contest that he never even entered. And that already sounds suspicious enough. Despite that, the two brothers decide to check the place out, with Mario going on ahead and having Luigi meet with him. Luigi then makes it to the mansion only to find that it's darker, older, and more sinister compared to what was in the photo. As he enters the mansion, Mario is nowhere to be found, so he searches around the front of the mansion for clues on his brother's whereabouts. Just then, an orange ghostly figure appeared and dropped a key to one of the rooms before flying off. Luigi enters one of the locked rooms only to be startled by a ghost, and before it could attack Luigi, a mysterious old man appeared from the shadows and proceeded to suck the ghost into some unspecified device, but the ghost managed to fight back and escape. Luigi then goes to talk with the old man, who reveals himself to be Professor Egad, and before he could explain the situation, more orange ghosts arrive, forcing the two to evacuate the mansion. Back in Egad's hideout, after Luigi told him of his predicament, the professor explains to him that he's lived in the area for a long time and that the mansion appeared out of nowhere a few days ago, hinting that the ghosts are some other darker powers behind the mansion's creation. The professor also revealed that he saw Mario go in the mansion as well and never came out, and after finding out he was Luigi's brother, offered to help Luigi on getting him back. Before entering the mansion, the professor has Luigi trained to use the ghost-sucking vacuum we saw the former use earlier, known only as the Poltergust 3000. We then go to the professor's art gallery, where the professor reveals himself to be a collector of paintings, and the ghosts that are haunting the mansion were once part of the paintings but broke free. After getting the hang of the device in the game's tutorial level, Luigi then heads back into the mansion to find and rescue his brother. He fights against a bunch of ghosts until he comes across the first boss of the game, Chauncey the Ghost Baby. After defeating Chauncey, Luigi retrieves the key and returns to Egad's lab, where he uses a machine called the Ghost Portrificationizer, which takes the ghosts that Luigi captured and processes them into portraits to be put back into the professor's collection. Luigi returns to the mansion and was able to unlock the door in the front entrance of the mansion, allowing him to explore the first floor more, with more ghosts to go against as well. He eventually comes across this room that has a secret mechanism that moves the wall to expand the room, which reveals a trap door in which a total of 50 boos emerged in addition to King Boo, with all of them scattering to hide throughout the mansion. Professor Egad reveals that the boos were responsible for releasing the ghosts from his collection of paintings in his gallery and hid in the mansion afterwards. Luigi then returns to Egad's lab, where they believe that the boos were also responsible for Mario's disappearance and have him trapped in the mansion somewhere, and in order to find him, Luigi must find and capture all of the boos, or at least enough to weaken their power since the boos rely on strength and numbers. Luigi returns to the mansion once again. After going throughout the mansion and capturing more ghosts and boos, Luigi comes across a ghost by the name of Madame Clairvoya, a fortune teller who will give us a hint on where Mario is in the mansion if we bring pieces of his clothes. Luigi continues to investigate the current area of the mansion until he comes across the second boss of the game, the Bogmire. After defeating the Bogmire, Luigi returns to the lab and once again puts the captured ghosts through the Portrificationizer and traps them in the portraits once again before returning to the mansion. At this point of the game, whether you collected all of Mario's clothes from Madame Clairvoya or not, you find a well in the backyard that leads to a pathway to a hidden room you can't enter yet. Luigi investigates the room through this pathway and finds none other than Mario, who is trapped in a portrait. Finally finding out where his brother is, Luigi needs to find a way to get into the room and free him. Luigi continues his mission capturing ghosts, boos, and finding clues until he comes across the third boss, a large group of boos gathering around to form the Boolossus. Luigi defeats the Boolossus by capturing all the boos forming the monster, weakening its power until there's no boos left. Luigi once again takes all the captured ghosts and brings them back to the lab to be trapped in the portraits once again. Luigi returns to where he last left off, but a lightning strike on the mansion caused a blackout, which gives the ghosts an advantage because they fear the light. Luigi comes across a telephone room on the same level where Toad calls one of the phones and tells Luigi that he can get the power back on by activating a breaker switch in the basement. After capturing more ghosts in addition to turning the power back on, Luigi then makes it deeper into the basement, which includes the room that Mario is trapped in. But as he tries to enter, King Boo appears, and at this point of the game, if you haven't captured at least 40 of the 50 boos throughout the mansion, King Boo, with the use of his big boo breath, will blow you away to the main entrance of the mansion. However, after you collect at least 40 or even all 50 boos, you will be able to enter the room where King Boo is waiting for you. King Boo is determined to trap Luigi in the painting along with Mario and challenges him to one last battle. The Mario painting turns into Bowser, which sucks Luigi into the painting, where Luigi fights a manifestation of Bowser created by King Boo, which is basically a costume. After a long and arduous battle, Luigi defeats King Boo in the Bowser costume and sucks King Boo into the Poltergust.
Boy, talk about getting ahead of yourself. But yeah, in all seriousness, I wonder how many kids back then got nightmares just from seeing that part. I mean, that didn't bother me so much, but that was a little bit dark.
Luigi is freed from the painting and receives a call from the professor, who congratulates him on defeating King Boo. Luigi then grabs the painting Mario is trapped in. Relieved and happy that his brother is safe, he returns to the lab to free him. With the use of Egad's machine, the two imprison the remaining ghosts Luigi captured in addition to King Boo. Afterwards, the two then free Mario from his painting prison by using the machine to reverse the process, which, judging by the sound of it, did not seem to tickle. After reversing the process, Mario shoots out of the machine back to his normal self, with Luigi crying tears of joy to see his brother back to normal while laughing at Mario's small predicament. The game then ends with a dazed Mario as the screen closes out. And since the mansion was just a manifestation created by the ghosts and the Boos, which disappeared after King Boo's defeat, Professor E. Gadd uses the treasure that Luigi collected in the mansion throughout the game to help build Luigi a new house where the mansion originally was.
The story is very joyous and fun and definitely a different take compared to Mario's usual games. Now that I got the story out of the way, let's look at the game itself.
Now to start off with the graphics. I think it's obvious that the graphics for this game, in addition to many other first-party GameCube games, have aged pretty well in terms of graphics and quality. The graphics for this game still hold up today and don't feel dated for its time. I've noticed that when it comes to the quality of a lot of first-party titles on the GameCube. They have a way of looking cartoony enough to not be taken seriously, but still be ahead of its time. Like Luigi's Mansion is 20 years old, but these graphics make it almost look like a Nintendo Switch game. Now that could be taken in different ways, but my point is that despite how old this game is, the graphics still hold up pretty well. Gameplay-wise, I'm not gonna lie, this gameplay style still kind of holds up despite its age. From what I've heard, the gameplay did improve later on in the sequels, but despite how primitive it may seem in the first game, I've had no difficulties whatsoever adjusting to and getting the hang of the gameplay despite a few annoyances, especially considering the fact that the last time I played this game was back in Georgia when I was 5 years old. But like I said, I haven't played the sequels, so I can't really say much on the matter of comparison. As I've said before, Luigi's Mansion is different from your standard Mario game. There's no platforming, no running around and jumping on enemies, no power-ups such as mushrooms, fire flowers, tanuki suits, and so on. Well, there are power-ups in this game, but I'll get to that later. In Luigi's Mansion, it plays in a sort of fixed camera perspective where the camera is placed in one spot the entire time unless a scripted scene happens. You navigate throughout the mansion and you can use the A button to interact with the environment, whether it's to interact with objects in the room to get items from them, open doors, or talk with characters like Toad. Be careful when you open doors in this game though, because sometimes you'll get fake ones that will slam you into the wall Looney Tunes style and can cause damage. When not near an interactive object, pushing the A button will have Luigi call out to Mario. Mario! Mario! Wow, is it just me or does this feel like a spiritual predecessor to the Press X to Jason meme from Heavy Rain?
Jason!
Mario!
Jason!
Mario!
Jason!
Mario!
Now the flashlight Luigi uses in this game is an important tool for fighting ghosts, which I'm going to talk about next. Whenever there are ghosts nearby, you point your flashlight at them, which stuns them in place and shows their heart and a counter over it. Once a ghost has been stunned, you push the right trigger to start sucking in ghosts with your Poltergust 3000. As you're sucking the ghosts in, the counter over their heart starts to decrease. Once it reaches 0, the ghost gets sucked in completely. You can accelerate this process by pulling the left thumbstick in the opposite direction the ghost is facing when you're sucking them in. Sometimes with the right timing you can suck in more than one ghost at the same time, and usually the bigger the ghosts, the longer it takes to capture them. You can use the C stick to point the flashlight up or down. This is helpful when there are ghosts above eye level like those floating over your head or hanging down from a ceiling. Although I will say, when you use the C stick to turn or look up or down, it feels like Luigi's turning in quicksand because of how slow it feels, but it's nothing too annoying. It's just inconvenient when you try to aim at the ghosts when they're at a certain height and you have to have the flashlight pointed at an exact angle, and it can be really picky with how you point at them. Also, I mentioned earlier that this game has its own variations of power-ups. As you progress through the game, you'll come across certain chests that includes one of 3 elemental medallions: fire, ice, and water. Once you obtain the medallion, you'll be able to have the ability to use elements after you suck them in from a source by pushing the left trigger. For example, you can get the ability to use ice from a fridge, you can get fire from a torch, and you can get water from a faucet. These elements can help you solve puzzles and are also used against elemental ghosts when you use the right element. The way how the elements work against each other works in a sort of triangular relationship. Fire melts ice, ice freezes water, and water puts out fire. Now I know what you're thinking, and yes, the concept of using the right and left triggers to operate the Poltergust basically works like this: suck and blow.
Good night, everybody. Daddy.
Now, the ghosts that you go against in the beginning of the game are pretty simple, but the ghosts that you go against later on as the game progresses are real assholes and can get really annoying. There are different variations of ghosts, each with their own distinct means of attacks. For example, these orange ones slowly come after you and attack you when close enough. There are these light pinkish ghosts that hang from the ceiling and will drop down to surprise and attack you when close enough. Ghosts that can grab you and drain your health require you to wiggle the left thumbstick to get them off, and there are even ghosts that roll bowling balls at you. And there are also some ghosts with one of the 3 elements they use for powers, so you need to have one of the elements that best fits against them. Like I said, triangular relationship. Then there are these mask ghosts, which I find to be the most annoying enemies in the game. The mask prevents them from being stunned, and this makes them a bit tricky to go against when they're in groups. To beat them, you just need to suck off their masks, then you can stun them and suck them with the poltergust just like with any other ghost. But what makes them really annoying is that sometimes they'll disappear right when you hit them with your flashlight. The only time ghosts will appear is when you're in a dark area, and in the one segment of the game where the power goes out, they spawn endlessly no matter what room you're in, and they can be relentless. I love the fact that you can distinguish which type of ghost you're up against based on their size, shape, and color. It really helps give you an idea of what you're up against and helps prepare you for fighting them. But sometimes these ghosts can be real annoying, as even if you flash your light at some of them, they'll disappear in a nanosecond before you have a chance to capture them, like the mask ghosts I mentioned previously. It doesn't happen all the time, but it happens with certain ghosts and it can be really frustrating. Now, while I'm on the subject of ghosts, I might as well talk about the portrait ghosts, who act as the bosses for the game. Now, throughout the game, there are unique portrait ghosts with distinctive traits and unique characteristics and personalities. Like this fat ghost who's just gorging all the food he can find at the table, or my personal favorite, this one ghost in the music room. Also, when you mess around with the instruments in this room, it plays the First World theme from the original Mario Brothers.
Oh yeah.
Each portrait ghost you go up against require to be beaten by a unique strategy, and once you figure that strategy out, they'll be taken care of pretty easily. For example, the first portrait ghost, Neville, will appear when you look away from him and then disappear when you look at him. You have to wait for him to yawn, and once he does, he's vulnerable to get hit by the flashlight, then you can proceed to trap him. Another example is Biff Atlas, the bodybuilding ghost. You have to hit him with a punching bag 3 times to make him vulnerable for capture, but each time he gets hit, he gets angry and will have different attack patterns you need to avoid. As stated before, each portrait ghost will have different strategies required to be defeated. Some will be pretty simple to understand, but some will be a little more complex to figure out. When attempting to capture them, the portrait ghosts will take a while to trap in the poltergust because most of them have very high health, but if you stick to the strategy on beating them, they won't be such a problem. Now, while a majority of these portrait ghosts are required to be defeated to progress, there are some ghosts that are optional but still worth defeating just to get some bonuses. Whenever you defeat the bosses of that floor, then the floor will be lit up, preventing ghosts from spawning. Next, I'll be talking about the boos. So as stated in the story, the boos are responsible for everything that happened in the mansion. There will be a boo hiding in one of the many rooms throughout the mansion. Unlike regular ghosts, however, boos don't just appear out of nowhere in the darkness. In order to get a boo out of hiding, you'll need to search for them in the room they're hiding in by interacting with the furniture by either using the A button when up close or using your poltergust. Be careful though, because most of the time instead of finding a boo, you'll find a trap such as a bomb or a harmless boo-shaped kickball which serves no purpose other than a way for the boos to practically give you the middle finger. There's a way to find boos throughout the mansion, but I'll explain that part later. Once the boo appears, you use the poltergust to suck them in, and you don't even need to stun them with the flashlight. Each boo's health points varies as you progress. The first ones you capture usually have up to 30 health points, but the later boos have health points up to 300 or more, and can escape to and hide in another room if you're not quick enough. But their health doesn't recharge, so it's not too tedious. I also love how every time a boo appears, they say a random pun just to taunt you. There's a total of 50 boos to capture throughout the mansion, but in order to fight against the final boss of the game, King Boo, you need to capture at least 40 of them. Also, just a heads up, if you're a completionist looking to 100% the game by capturing all 50 boos, King Boo doesn't count. Now, one of the other mechanics I should talk about in this game is the Game Boy Horror. The Game Boy Horror is a device in the form of a Game Boy, obviously, created by EGAD, which he gives you at the beginning of the game. To bring up the Game Boy Horror, you push either the Y button or Z button on the controller. With this, you can view the map, your stats, description of the ghosts throughout the game, and of course, your inventory. The The Game Boy Horror is also used as a radar for detecting boos. There's a light on top of the device that will start flashing yellow when there's a boo nearby. The closer you are to the boo, the faster it'll start flashing. Once you're close enough or right in front of the boo's hiding spot, the light will start flashing red, signifying the boo's location. But like I said before, it'll trick you with one of the traps at the first attempt. Also, if you push the X button on the controller, this will put you in a first-person view using the Game Boy Horror's camera. This can be used to view the surroundings of the environment. If you push the A button while looking at an object or anything of interest in this mode, it'll give a description on it. You also get some unique dialogue from the portrait ghosts if you push the A button while pointing at their heart. Also, if you push the A button while looking at a mirror with the Game Boy, any mirror in the mansion to be specific, it'll transport Luigi to the main entrance of the mansion. And like I said, you can use any mirror in the mansion for this, so while this works as sort of a fast travel system, it's a one-way trip. However, this is pretty handy for if you need to backtrack. Look at Luigi doing mirror selfies before it was cool. Next thing I'm going to talk about is the in-game loot. Throughout the game, you can collect treasure and it comes in different forms. There's of course the iconic gold coins that you'd find in the main games. Other forms of treasure include dollar bills, gold bars, jewels, and diamonds of different colors, and pearls of different sizes. The value of the jewels and diamonds varies based off of their colors, and the pearls based off of their sizes. Now the treasure isn't used as a form of in-game currency to purchase other items, so don't expect to use them to purchase tools and upgrades to help you go against ghosts easier. Although it would have been cool if they had a tool based off of the ghost trap, but that's just me. The most common treasure you can usually find are gold coins, gold bars, and bills. And you find them usually by interacting with the environment. You can either go up to them and interact with them with the A button, or use the poltergust on them and the loot will spawn out of them. You can also find hearts to help fill up your health if it's low. Hearts can appear from searching furniture, and ghosts will also drop hearts when you capture them. And while you can freely pick them up, the quickest way to collect them would be using your poltergust to suck them in. However, the more valuable loot such as jewels, diamonds, and pearls can only be collected through certain means. The jewels, for example, can be found by completing certain tasks such as watering plants, searching specific objects, and light up every room in the mansion. The pearls are not too hard to collect as you can get them from fighting the optional bosses. As you use your poltergust on them, they start dropping pearls of different sizes, and if I understand this correctly, the sizes vary depending on how long you're trying to capture them. The largest pearls are obviously the most valuable. And now there are the diamonds, which are rarer than the other treasures, and just like the jewels, come in different colors, and their colors determine their worth. The red diamond can be obtained on the balcony watering all the plants, and the second one can be obtained after defeating King Boo. Unfortunately, the red diamond is the most worthless of the three, being worth the same as one gold coin. The silver diamond can be obtained from opening treasure chests, and the gold diamond, the rarest and most valuable of the three, come in a total of 2. The first one can be obtained when you capture all 50 boos. The second one is a little tricky. In order to get the second one, you have to water the plant in the boneyard at 3 specific times. The first time is to water it when you first visit the yard, the second time after defeating the Bogmire, and the third after defeating the Boolossus. And let me emphasize this, you have to make sure you water the plant in those specific times. If you neglect to water the plant before it either fights, the plant will wilt and you lose the gold diamond and all the money you could have gotten along with it.
So yeah, to get some of the treasure in this game, you need to do a little bit of work for it. But thankfully it's not as much work as collecting all the shine sprites in Super Mario Sunshine.
Now you're probably wondering, if not for purchasing upgrades or items, what use do the treasures have? For stats, of course. Each time you complete a chapter, you'll see the stats of how much money you collected in that chapter. Be careful though, when you get hit by a ghost, not only will you lose health, but some of your loot will be lost too, and will disappear if you don't collect it fast enough. And I should also mention that when your health drops to 0, it's game over and you're back to the main menu screen. And this game has no checkpoints or autosaves either, so you'll have to load up your save file from the last time you saved. So be sure to save as often as possible so you don't have to worry about losing so much progress if it comes to that. You can save your progress when you complete a chapter, capture a boo, or when you come across toads throughout the mansion during your playthrough. Also, when you complete a chapter, you'll also see which ghosts you've captured as they hang them up as portraits on the screen. Speaking of that, you can actually enter EGAD's gallery where you can view the collection of portraits of all the ghosts you've captured throughout the game. It's a nice little feature and can give you a sense of pride for what you've accomplished. And also, I should mention that there's an extra game mode for the game called Hidden Mansion, which you unlock after beating the game. To start Hidden Mansion, all you have to do is select the save file that you completed the game with, then when you're at EGAD's lab, just select the option. Hidden Mansion is essentially the hard mode of the game. Most of the ghosts put up more of a fight and can do more damage, and some of the stronger ghosts, which are usually seen near the later half of the game, instead appear early in the game. But the Poltergust is also slightly more powerful powerful in this mode, so you have at least a slight advantage against the stronger ghosts. Hidden Mansion also has almost double or more of the amount of treasure to collect in this mode, which makes it more rewarding, not to mention easier to get a higher ranking after beating the game. Also, apparently the PAL version of the game has a much harder version of Hidden Mansion, with the entire mansion being mirrored, harder boss battles, darker rooms, far more agile and faster boos, and even more features. Imagine getting that version of Hidden Mansion as a kid. Now back on the subject of the treasure, depending on how much loot you've collected during your playthrough, you'll be awarded a rank at the end of the game after the credits. And as I've stated before, you'll also get a portrait of the house built by EGAD with the money you collected. That being said, the more treasure you collect, the higher the rank and the bigger your new house will be. I got rank B when I played through this game, but here are the other houses of different ranks as well. Overall, Luigi's Mansion is definitely a classic, and for a 20-year-old GameCube launch title, it still holds that same enjoyment it had back then. It's a definite must-play title whether you're a collector or if you want to look into more older titles for a different experience from the main series. Now again, I haven't played its sequel titles yet, so I can't really compare it in terms of gameplay or quality, and I definitely can't say it's one of my favorite games in the series, but in terms of a first-party GameCube title, it's definitely one of my favorites on the console. I will say if you want to play the game, get ready to pay a pretty penny for it. A lot of GameCube games, primarily its first-party titles, have been skyrocketing in price over the years, and Luigi's Mansion is definitely up there in price, but thankfully not as much as a lot of other obscure titles. When I first bought this game a few years back, I was lucky enough to get it for $30, but nowadays when you go online, it goes up to $60 and even more. Even some of my local game stores I go to are selling this for around $80. Your best and possibly cheapest bet would be getting the 3DS remake, which was released back in 2018. It's a little high in price too, but usually not as high as the GameCube version. I don't own the 3DS version, so I'm resorting to using clips on YouTube. It also includes new content and features that weren't included in the GameCube version, so definitely hit up the 3DS version if you're interested. I honestly would love to see this game get the Switch treatment, as it would be nice for old school GameCube fans to play the first game on a modern console, and for younger gamers to experience what gamers of my generation experienced. Only time will tell if that will ever happen.
Luigi's Mansion never gets old, and it's always a blast every time I play through it. I'll definitely need to play the sequels at some point, and I'm definitely going to look at them on this channel. I just need to figure out how to record on a 3DS. But now that I've got two of my childhood gems out of the way, in the next 2 weeks, we'll be looking at a game from my teenage years. Brutal Legend. I'm looking forward to talking about this game, as I have nothing but good things and good memories to say about it. I'm Shane, also known as Wonder Subset, and I'll see you guys in the next 2 weeks.